I never meant to be home that night. The plan was a 12-hour shift under fluorescent hangar lights, tools in hand, coaxing a jet engine into readiness before sunrise. Instead, a last-minute weather delay grounded the flight, and by 7:30 my supervisor was telling me to clock out. Nothing unusual about going home early, except fate likes to hide knives in the ordinary. My name is Carter. 29. Aviation mechanic. The kind of man who spends more hours with rivets and torque wrenches than at dinner tables. My fiancée, Brooke, never seemed to mind. She had her world at the museum, dusting bones older than imagination, while I worked with machines meant to outfly time itself. We fit together, or so I thought. 8 weeks from the altar, we were supposed to be a story about stability, trust, and forever. That night the building was quiet, the kind of stillness that amplifies every step. The elevator had been out for days, so I took the back stairwell. My boots echoed like warnings I didn't know how to read. At the door, I slid the key in, turned it, and pushed. The apartment greeted me with darkness. No TV glow, no music, just shadows. Her purse was tossed on the counter. Shoes abandoned neatly by the mat. Signs of someone home. Then came the sound. Not conversation, not laughter. A rhythm I knew with a certainty that hollowed me out. For years it had been mine, the sound of her wanting me. Now it carried a name that wasn't mine. I didn't storm in. I didn't shout. I froze in the narrow hallway, where the only light was the spill from our bedroom door cracked a few inches open. My hand went for my phone before my brain caught up. Camera on, silence sharp enough to cut through bone. I pushed the door just enough to see. What I captured wasn't just betrayal, it was the brutal truth framed in pixels. Brooke, the woman I trusted with vows not yet spoken, with a man whose face I recognized from her casual mentions. In that instant, the wedding didn't just feel cancelled. It was buried. And me? I didn't cry, didn't rage. I documented. Because some endings demand evidence. The door clicked shut behind me like the end of a sentence. Outside, the night air carried the sharp bite of winter, and I let it fill my lungs until the ache in my chest turned into something steadier. Rage would have been easy, screaming, shattering plates, demanding answers, but rage leaves scars you can't control. What I wanted now was control. I sat in my truck 2 blocks from the apartment, phone balanced in my hand, replaying those 23 seconds of video. It was enough. Faces clear. Voices clear. No one could twist this into doubt. Proof mattered more than pain. Proof is clean. In the glow of the dashboard, I opened my contacts. First call, the jeweler. The ring, a 3-carat cushion cut I had been chipping away at for months, was still sitting in their vault. My voice stayed level as I canceled the order, requested the refund. $31,000 I would no longer chain to a lie. Second call, my brother Dominic. No questions, just the quiet promise of his couch. That's the thing about brothers, you don't need to explain, they just know when silence means everything. Third, the venue. Insurance covered catastrophe, and betrayal felt like a catastrophe to me. 1 box checked, thousands saved. Then the caterer. Then the photographer. My thumb scrolled, my voice calm, my notes precise. By the time the city's lights dimmed past midnight, the wedding had unraveled as methodically as a flight plan I no longer needed to follow. It was strange how detached I felt, like a mechanic stripping a broken engine, 1 bolt at a time. Each call, each cancellation, wasn't fueled by heartbreak but by something colder. Efficiency. Every dollar reclaimed was a boundary drawn. Every contract closed was a wall built between me and her. When the last email was sent, I stared at the screen long enough to see my reflection in the glass, tired eyes, unshaken hands. Not the picture of a man abandoned, but of one recalibrating. She thought she had blindsided me. She thought I'd collapse. But I grew up in hangars where mistakes meant fire and steel ripping from the sky. You learn to respond without panic. You learn to survive by staying precise. This wasn't heartbreak. It was an operation. And it had just begun. By morning, The silence between us had grown teeth. My phone lit up before dawn, her name flashing again and again across the screen. At first it was soft, "Where are you? Are you okay?" But as the hours passed, the messages sharpened into panic. Then anger. Then desperation. 73 missed calls by breakfast. 100 texts by noon. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I watched them pile up like debris after a storm, each message proof that the calm choices I made the night before were beginning to shake the foundations of her world. At 8 a.m., a locksmith arrived. By 8:15, the locks were changed. Her clothes, her books, the framed photos she insisted we keep on the nightstand, boxed neatly and waiting outside the door. Not revenge. Just removal. Evidence that she no longer belonged inside. But the part one hadn't prepared for wasn't the logistics. It was the sound of my phone vibrating against the table while I sat in Dominic's kitchen. Her voicemails played like a broken symphony, pleading, crying, bargaining. Then came the crack in her voice when she realized I had sent the proof. Family, friends, colleagues. 3 seconds of grainy footage was all it took to collapse the perfect life she had staged. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, an unexpected weight pressed against my ribs. The man in that video, the one who calmly opened the door and recorded betrayal, wasn't the same man listening to her unravel now. That man was steel. This one was flesh, suddenly aware of the years I couldn't reclaim, the trust that had rotted quietly under my feet while I dreamed about vows and forever. For a moment, I thought about answering. Letting her explain. Giving her a chance to twist it into a mistake instead of a pattern. But I didn't. Because the evidence wasn't just in the video. It was in her voice now, desperate only because the spotlight exposed her. As I muted the phone and set it face down, I understood something sharp and final. This wasn't just the end of an engagement. It was the end of the man I had been with her, trusting, blind, easy to fool. That version of me was gone. And in the quiet that followed, I knew she wasn't the only one who had been exposed. The first real crack in my composure came not from Brooke, but from her sister. Melanie called late that afternoon, her voice steady in a way that felt rehearsed. "I'm sorry, Carter," she said. "I should have told you sooner." We met at a coffee shop off Main Street, the kind of place where the hiss of the espresso machine muffled private conversations. She slid a small envelope across the table. Inside were printed screenshots, time-stamped messages, receipts. Evidence. My stomach tightened as I realized it wasn't about Wesley. It was about others. "This wasn't a mistake," Melanie said quietly, as though the truth itself might shatter if spoken too loudly. "Brooke's been like this for years. Jerome, then Evan. She builds something stable, then burns it down. You're not the first." The words landed heavier than any voicemail, heavier than the video itself. Because betrayal once is a fracture. Betrayal as a pattern is a revelation. I wanted to argue, to defend the woman I had almost promised my life to. But the receipts were merciless. Flights I paid for while she was with someone else, nights she claimed she was writing when she was sending him photos from our apartment. There was even a message about me. "He's safe. Predictable. The kind of man who won't leave. He'll never suspect." I gripped the paper so tightly it crumpled in my hand. Safe. Predictable. That's all I had been to her. Melanie leaned in. "I know you don't owe me trust right now, but you need to see the full picture." She was never going to stop. The room felt smaller, airless. For months I had thought I was building a future. What I was really building was a disguise she could hide behind. The love I gave her wasn't a foundation, it was cover. I walked out of that cafe with proof I hadn't asked for but couldn't unsee. Every step to the truck felt heavier, like gravity itself had doubled. I had thought I was documenting an isolated betrayal. Now I understood I was dismantling a life constructed entirely of lies. And somewhere deep, beneath the calculation and control, something began to crack. Because evidence can protect you. But it doesn't stop your heart from bleeding. The pounding on my door came just past midnight. Drunken fists slurred pleas, her voice splintered by desperation. "Carter, please don't do this. You don't understand. I'll fix it. I can fix it." I didn't move from the chair by the window. The city lights painted faint stripes across the floor, and in that glow her shadow staggered against the frosted glass. I could have opened the door, could have stepped into the wreckage of her unraveling. Instead, I dialed. My voice to dispatch was calm, almost mechanical. "My ex-fiancée is threatening to harm herself. Please send someone." Red and blue lights flickered against the blinds 10 minutes later. The sound of her crying carried down the hall as officers led her away. I didn't watch from the doorway. I couldn't. Some moments demand you keep your distance, or you'll drown in them. But the real breaking point didn't come with police or tears. It came the next morning, in the sterile quiet of my lawyer's office. He slid a single sheet across the desk. Brooks' attempt to claim tenant rights. A last bid for control, for attachment. I scanned the page, the legal jargon, the empty reach of someone who had already lost everything. And then I laughed. Not cruelly, not with triumph, just a quiet, exhausted laugh at the absurdity. After everything, betrayal, lies, schemes, she still believed she had power over me. That laughter wasn't joy. It was release. It was the moment I realized the war was already over, even if she hadn't noticed. When I walked out onto the street, sunlight spilled between buildings, sharp and blinding. For the first time in weeks, my chest felt light. Because the decision had crystallized. I wasn't fighting her anymore. I wasn't fighting for anything she had touched. The battle was done the second I chose myself over her chaos. She could claw at the edges, scream into voicemails, spin stories to anyone who'd listen. It didn't matter. What mattered was the silence I carried inside now, the kind that comes after a storm, when the air is raw but breathable again. That silence was mine. And it was enough. Weeks passed, and the noise faded. Her calls slowed, then stopped. Friends who once filled my weekends with questions about tux fittings and reception playlists now kept their distance, unsure how to speak into the crater where a wedding had been. I didn't blame them. Silence, I'd learned, has its own gravity. At first, I kept expecting the ache to return, the sharp sting in the chest, the restless pacing at night. But pain has a half-life. It burns bright, then recedes, leaving behind something quieter, something you can live with. I spent more time in the hangar. Engines didn't lie. They broke, yes, but they broke honestly. You could trace the failure, put your hands on the fracture, rebuild piece by piece until it roared back to life. People weren't like that. Brooke had taught me that much. But machines gave me something people couldn't, the reassurance that broken things, under the right hands, can be made whole again. One evening, after another 12-hour shift, I walked out into the dusk. Planes carved silver arcs against the fading sky, and for the first time I let myself imagine a future untouched by her shadow. No altar, no vows, no betrayal hiding under the surface. Just me, steady as the hum of turbines, ready for something I didn't yet have words for. I thought of the man she had described in that message, safe, predictable, the one who wouldn't leave. She was wrong. I had left. Not in fury, not in flames, but in silence, in evidence, in control. And that choice had remade me. The wedding had been erased, the ring refunded, the apartment scrubbed of her. But the story wasn't about what I lost anymore. It was about what I carried forward, the proof that love without truth is a mask, and the certainty that I would never again mistake comfort for trust. I climbed into my truck, started the engine, and let the headlights cut a path through the dark. Ahead, the road stretched open and endless, a clean horizon. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't driving away from something. I was driving toward myself.